Thomas Nelson Publishers. The rationale for that is that the motion is in the nature of a resolution and was not properly submitted to the Resolutions Committee. And then the final motion that we are recommending that the chair rule not in order is Wiley Drake's motion from California, asking Ronnie Floyd to pray a designated prayer. While the committee affirms the need for prayer for revival, as was demonstrated last night by our convention as a whole, and while the committee affirms our need to partner with like-minded groups, allies on the issues of marriage and pro-life issues and religious liberty, it is outside the convention's authority to interfere with the language of anyone's personal prayer.
Thank you, Dr. Abear. The chair rules that the motions are not in order for the reasons that have been given and stated today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's the convention's long-standing practice to refer motions which affect the Constitution or bylaws to the Executive Committee for study in order to make sure that our governing documents are internally consistent and comply with all applicable laws. On behalf of the Committee on Order of Business, I move that the following motions be referred to the Executive Committee of the Southern Baptist Convention for consideration and report to the 2016 Southern Baptist Convention. Motion by Steve Bailey from Arkansas requesting a bylaw change requiring nomination speeches to include information on cooperative program giving, and a motion from Tim Barnett from North Carolina requesting a bylaw amendment requiring nominees for SBC offices to publicly address the convention.
You've heard this motion from the Committee on Order of Business, so are you ready for the question? Microphone number 2. Would you please state your name, your church, and your concern?
My name is Steve Bailey. My church is Calvary Baptist Church in Osceola, Arkansas. I ask that we not defer this to the committee. I made this motion, I think, 3 years ago. Didn't get anywhere. Made it last year, was ruled out of order. Made it this year, and it's referred to committee, which means it won't go anywhere either. I think the convention would like to know how much our elected officials support our cooperative program on a percentage basis rather than a dollar basis. A percentage basis puts it all on the same level with all the other churches. I know some churches can give like $1 million to the cooperative program, but some of us never pastor churches take in $1 million. You know, so a percentage level puts on an equal footing for everybody in the convention. And I think this convention would like to know how much the nominees give to the cooperative program when we're voting on them. For that reason, I'm asking that we not defer it, that we vote on that motion today.
Okay. Dr. Abear, would you speak to that?
Yes, Mr. President, thank you. And Brother Bailey, I appreciate your recommendation there. Our response as a committee would be that the historical precedent has been, this is the way it's always been done, is to refer bylaw amendments to the Executive Committee because there are multiple governing documents that our convention lives by. And we're talking about changing something that will affect us for a great many years ahead of us. And that kind of change is best dealt with by Executive Committee members who our convention elects, who can look at the issue with thoroughness, scrutiny, and examine all of the ramifications of a bylaw amendment. So we are represented by these Executive Committee members who can look at these things in detail and make sure that this is the kind of bylaw recommendation that we indeed want to adopt. And if the Executive Committee looks at all of those things and makes a recommendation, then it comes to the messengers at that point after it's been thoroughly examined. So our recommendation would be to refer this motion to the Executive Committee to where it can be appropriately dealt with and given the kind of thorough attention that it deserves.
Okay, we've come to time for the moment. If you would like to refer Brother Bailey's motion that you have heard the Committee on Order of Business say that that is what the will of the committee would be, If you would like to defer that to the Executive Committee, would you take your ballots and raise your ballots right now? Okay, thank you for that, and we want to be more than clear. So I'm going to ask the Chief Parliamentarian to come and to walk us through this for a brief moment.
The Committee on Order of Business has recommended to the messengers that Brother Bailey's motion be referred to the Executive Committee. If you vote yes, then that's exactly what will happen. If you vote no, if the negative prevails, then that means that the Committee on Order of Business will have to schedule this debate on a bylaw amendment immediately this morning. And so this morning's business will have to be amended in some fashion to create time for the messengers to take up this issue and debate this issue. So a yes vote will let this matter go to the Executive Committee for their study and a report back to you. A no vote will put it in your lap to deal with right now.
Thank you, and I trust you have your ballots, and if you would like to vote yes, as just explained, and refer this to the Executive Committee, would you take your ballots and raise your ballots, please? Thank you. If you would like to vote no and work somehow this agenda into today's agenda and have the convention deal with, then would you please raise your ballots? The affirmative has it, and the motion is referred. Thank you, messengers, and thank you, Brother Bailey, for your concern, and the Executive Committee will take that very seriously. Now the question is referring Tim Barnett's question, also requesting a bylaw amendment in relationship to those matters as stated earlier. And so if you would like to vote yes, and we refer that as well to the Executive Committee, would you please raise your ballots? Thank you. And if you would like to vote no to that, would you please raise your ballots? The affirmative has it. Therefore, we will refer that to the Executive Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. This completes the report of the Committee on Order of Business at this time. We're now ready to take up Executive Committee recommendation number 5.
Okay, I would like to recognize the Registration Secretary to announce the vote from yesterday. And so, Jim, would you please come and share with us the news?
Thank you, Dr. Floyd. At this time, we have 5,324 messengers registered. At the time of the ballot yesterday, there were 5,277 messengers registered, with 2,122 messengers casting ballots. On recommendation number 5, on the amendment, there were 1,184 votes in favor of the amendment, or 55.80%. There were 888 votes against the amendment, or 41.85% of the vote. There were 50 ballots that were disallowed, or 2.36% of the vote.
So, say the affirmative has it, the amendment is adopted, then recognize me.
So the affirmative has it, and the amendment was adopted. And now would like our Chief Parliamentarian, Barry McCarty, to bring clarity in relationship to exactly where we are right now, so everyone will know exactly where we are. at the time.
Thank you, Mr. President. We do want to be clear, and my apologies yesterday. I think I got everything right, except at one point I referred to recommendation number 5 as number 6. And a little later on in the session, a messenger was gracious enough to point that out by a point of order, and we ruled that well taken, the chair did, because we want to call things by their correct names. You remember, this is recommendation number 5 from the Executive Committee. That is on page 37 of your book of reports. This is amending the SBC bylaws in order to, it regards the quorum and the voting matters. Now, here's what the messengers decided. You adopted that amendment. Essentially, you are leaving the quorum requirement in the bylaws. That's what you decided. The recommendation was to strike the quorum requirement, and by your amendment, you struck language, striking language. So that's a double negative. So you are going to retain your bylaw 35. So in your book of reports, at the top of page 38, where you see the bylaw 35 quorum, where you see that strucken through in the recommendation, you have retained that language. So that language will stay in the bylaws. Whether you adopt this or not, it will stay in the bylaws. And also, if you will note on page 37, at the bottom of that, there's also an editorial change in bylaw 10 at the very bottom section G there. The quorum for conducting business at a meeting of the Southern Baptist Convention shall consist of those present. That is struck out editorially to make these agree. So your amendment prevailed. You've decided to keep the quorum in bylaw 35, and now the question is on adopting recommendation number 5 as you have amended it. That is the pending question that the chair is going to put to you now. Questions on adopting recommendation number 5 as amended?
Okay, the question is on recommendation number 5 as the convention voted yesterday to amend. Are you ready for the question?
Go ahead. Those in favor?
Then all of you who are in favor of adopting this recommendation number 5 as you have amended, would you please take your ballots and raise your ballots? Thank you. And those of you who are opposed to adopting this recommendation number 5 as amended, would you please raise your ballots? Thank you. The affirmative has it, and recommendation number 5 is adopted as amended.
Now we're ready for women's missionary.
Thank you very much, messengers, for all that you have done. Thank you, Barry McCarty, for bringing us clarity along the way. And thank you, Andrew A. Baer, and your committee for great leadership today. It is with great joy today that I get to recognize a woman that I recognize and honor today who has done a superb job leading the women's missionary